It's September the 13th. With help from some other local farmers and enthusiasts, we're planning to plough with 4 articulated tractors today. It promises to be an extremely special spectacle. John Haynes' John Deere 8850 arrived at the farm a couple of days ago. Due to its 3.9 metre width, this was a job for specialist haulier James Dixon using a 460 horsepower DAF XF lorry. A movement order was required for the 18-mile journey, and an evening was chosen when the roads were quieter. John McDowell's Ford FW-60 arrived this morning from Essex aboard Mike Wild's 530 horsepower V8-powered Scania 144, whilst the plough was brought up by Matt Ockenden. After hooking up the ploughs, it's only a short trip from the yard across the A140 main road to the field. But with 4 combinations, each well over 17 metres long, this is an extremely impressive sight in its own right. It's not long before the tractors get to work in earnest. The sound is immense as a combined 1,325 horsepower goes to work. In the field we have a Ford Versatile 946, Ford FW-30, the John Deere 8850, and Ford FW-60. When new, these were some of the largest tractors on the planet. They were the most powerful models offered by their manufacturers and date from an era when demands for more power were met by shipping American-made articulated giants across the Atlantic. Following each other up the field, the 4 pivot-steered giants produce an incredible cacophony of sound, which reverberates all around. The earth almost shakes as they draw past. The Dowdeswell semi-mounted on-land ploughs add a very British flavour to the field. There weren't many reversible ploughs available for use with large tractors like these, and the DP2 was the most popular choice in Britain. It was made between 1975 and 1993 in sizes from 5 to 12 furrows. Over 150 Ford FWs were sold in the UK, making them relatively popular. The later versatile 946 and John Deere 8850 are somewhat rarer, with fewer than 10 of each sold over here. With 38 furrows turning the soil, the ploughs take a massive combined width of just over 13 metres. The versatile 946 was launched in the UK in 1989, 3 years after Ford New Holland acquired the Canadian manufacturer. It has a 14-litre, 325 horsepower straight-six Cummins engine and a 12-speed power-shift transmission. Angus Hamilton's excellent example was first registered in Essex in 1993. The 1985 DP2 plough is a long clearance version. The FW-30 was Ford's first articulated tractor in the UK and was launched in late 1978. It was made in the US by Steiger and is powered by a 14.8-litre Cummins V8 engine, producing 295 horsepower. This one is owned by Tom Stiles and was originally supplied by Ernest Doe & Sons in 1980 in northeast Essex. It's matched with a 1978 DP2, which has been retrofitted with a yoke-type pivoting headstock. The FW-60 became Ford's new flagship when it was launched in the UK in late 1980. It's similar to the FW-30, but with a turbocharged version of the V8 Cummins engine, producing 335 horsepower. This 1984 example is owned by John McDowell. John Deere's massive 8850 made its UK debut in 1983 and was the most powerful tractor ever produced by the company. Its 15.6-litre V8 engine was designed and built in-house at Waterloo and was never fitted to any other tractor. A semi-power shift transmission provides 16 forward speeds and it tips the scales at 17 tonnes. John Haynes imported this 8850 from the US last year, as he explains.
I always wanted an 8850. I always liked the John Deere Arctics and I wanted the V8, so it had to be an 88. I spent a long time looking for one in the UK. There weren't that many came over originally, and finding them is somewhat challenging. So I started looking on the internet overseas and managed to find them in America. They're still making good money over there, and eventually I did find this one, which had possible engine issues. So I decided to take a somewhat foolish risk and brought it over. So this particular example of the 8850 was sold new in 1982 by Sloan Implements in Verdun, Illinois, to a local farmer. We believe it's used on mixed arable. It has had a front blade on the tractor at some point. Sloan Implements did a refurb on it in 1994. They went through the engine. Unfortunately, there was a cab fire, so some of the wiring harness has been replaced and it's had a cab lining kit. So having decided to buy this particular 88, we containerised it to bring it over, and it landed in Felixstowe and came locally to us in Suffolk. So we reassembled the 88 as a number of bits, as you can imagine, and having got the engine back together, we stripped it down, did the head gaskets, and we actually found the fault to be the water pump seal. Fingers crossed, seems to be running okay since then.
Working at about 8 kilometers per hour, each run across the 94-acre field and back takes around 15 minutes, giving an overall work rate of 18 acres per hour, and that's without pushing the tractors very hard.
This is my FW-60 tractor, beautiful tractor. I grew up with it when I was a kid and I absolutely loved it, and I always dreamt of having one day, and 20 odd years later I actually tracked this machine down and bought it myself. It was half done up when I got it, and I've really finished it off and spent a lot of time and obviously money doing it up and making it look nice. She's been ploughing today with the Dowdeswell DP220 plough, and in the 1970s Ford were looking for power. They wanted horsepower. There was big competitors on the other brand tractors, like John Deere, things like that, and these were introduced to feed the market. So an interesting chap who I met, David Pearson, who worked for Ford, a very nice man. He went over with a few other colleagues and he actually test drove these Steiger Panther Series 3 tractors and decided it would be a great idea to import them under the Ford name. And they are basically a Series 3 Steiger in blue livery. The FW-30 that you saw earlier, ploughing, is a non-turbo version of this, and this is a turbo version. This exact tractor was first registered on the 8th of September 1984, and I've got all the history with it, all the old photographs that are working, and I used to ride in it as I was a lad. It sits on some nice Michelin tyres that you can see, and I've done new paint and graphics and original decals, emblems. It's all nice in the cab, there's not a button missing. You may be looking at my toolbox up here. It actually looks pretty naff, but it's actually the original toolbox that was made at South Essex Motors in Essex. And when the Steigers came into the country, all the linkage and everything was fitted there, and Dowdeswell worked together with Ford and they amalgamated the rear linkages on these tractors. So as I say, my pride and joy, and it's a pleasure to be here ploughing with it today.
we've decided to call it a day. The rest of the long work will be finished off tomorrow. With the tractors lined up side by side, it's interesting to compare their different designs, such as how the John Deere 8850 sits inside its axles rather than on top of them. Large tractors have an equally sizable appetite for fuel. Angus brings some diesel across the field using his 1974 Ford 3000 on the Bowser. The 3000 and FW create a very contrasting scene, somewhat reminiscent of Ford's FW-30 brochure and advertising, which featured a 3600 being dwarfed by the Arctic. Sights like this would have been fairly typical on many large farms, and it's a great ending to a great day.